Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. We got Mike joining us for the first time, and I am stoked for it. Now, while I'm stoked, you should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine, Fridays for The Collective, and don't forget to sign up for the Reinforcement Loop, the new newsletter coming out from The Collective, all about what we talk about here, and that way you get to stay in the loop every week. Other than that, Mike, let's get to you. Give us a quick 10, 15 seconds. Who are you, where you come from, all that good stuff, and we'll get into the conversation.
My name is Michael Lachlan from Kingston, Ontario, Canada, and I'm a 25-year veteran of the Kingston Fire Department. And for the past 9 years, I've been a above-knee amputee, so the first and only above-knee amputee full-time firefighter in Canada.
That's going to be tough getting your bunker stuff on. I got to imagine just trying to get it over and prosthetic would be quite a lot more challenging than just your single leg, eh?
Yeah, and it was, and that wasn't actually doable. So what we had to do was I have to have two exact same legs. One stays in my bunker gear, and what I do is I just change out the socket of my leg, and then so I put one boot on and one other leg, so it's way quicker, right?
That makes a lot more sense. Yeah. Okay. I was trying to think of how would you work that through? Shaun, how's the mountain treating you?
I love cool humans. I love humans that kick that ass and do cool stuff and figure out ways to be awesome. How long have you been amputated for now, Mike?
So it was 2016, June 6, 2016 that I lost my leg. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going on 8 years now, 9-ish years kind of thing. So yeah, that's over that time. Obviously, you've learned a bunch of things. Man, I'd like to do a whole show just on that, but Chance's got his plan.
We can. Hey, the plan can shift and flow, man.
No. We'll see what bubbles up. But I'm very cool. Very cool.
All right. Well, I'm actually just all of a sudden getting interested in this as well more so. But let's talk about this concept. Keep pushing was what I wrote down, and I want to know what your guys' first thoughts were on that. You saw the emails when it came in, and you're like, where do we go with this, Mike? What do you think?
I mean, keep pushing's been my entire life since about 2007 when I had my first accident. I had a snowmobile accident in 2007, and I shattered my femur, broke my kneecap off, broke my tibia fibia, compound fracture of my ulna sticking out. So I have titanium holding my whole left side together. And that was, a separate accident from where I lost my leg. And so I made it back to work, full duties within 8 months. So talk about keep pushing. They told me to do one push-up and I did 200, one lap around the hospital floor and I would do 30, right? So it was just always about pushing. And then, one bad thing after another seemed to happen to me for a few years. And I just, my whole life's been pushing since then. Keep pushing, keep moving.
I'm digging it. Shaun, what do you think?
So I know that this show is being recorded. So today is Monday. And the show is going to be dropped whenever it gets dropped. Maybe this Wednesday, is it, Chance?
Yep, Wednesday.
Okay, so today's Monday. Well, today being Monday, this morning, I put up a post, and it's a photo of me with my Pathfinder hoodie on. And I did some verbiage on that on my Instagram account. And generally speaking, the reason that I wrote that was, two reasons. But the primary reason was because I wanted to use that as the proxy or the platform to explain that, man, you can push yourself freaking hard, way harder than you think. And that course, that 70-day long course, taught me that I had to learn what I was made of. And sometimes you've got to get put in positions that aren't maybe fully understood by you, but are so bonkers, are so wild, are so almost unimaginably difficult that when you're in it and you just tell yourself, I'm going to figure this out, that's the gold, baby. That's where all the good stuff is. And so that's the primary reason that I wrote that post on Do you think you've got the parts? Do you think you've got what it takes to be a Pathfinder? And so the second reason that I put that post up is because I was just kind of tired of people in my little mountain town. Not tired, but it's a bit frustrating when people walk up to you and say, "Are you part of a Frisbee team? Or is there a new car wash team in town? Is there a Pathfinder car washing unit being formed up?" My friends in town know nothing about what I used to do, really. They also don't know how kind of crazy it was, how difficult it was. And so I think we have two jobs in life. One, you kick that ass. And then two, you explain to others how to kick that ass. And so maybe in this conversation today, we'll get there somehow.
I think we will. I mean, it literally says on your mug, pick up the pace. Like that's the whole point. Mike, you got any thoughts on what Shaun just laid out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, our job is to motivate other people and inspire other people to pick up the pace, right? And to push. Everyone seems to complain a lot these days and give up, right? And poor me. There's a lot of poor me's out there. I just think it's, if they see people like us, it inspires them and motivates them to be like us and to push through and get through what they're going through. Everyone goes through different levels, of hard times, and it doesn't matter what level you're at, you got to get through it no matter what.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's funny how we go through these cycles in life where we will, almost want to be a pity party for ourselves. And sometimes those can last for like a half second. And like, what am I doing? And you look back into it. Sometimes they can last weeks. Sometimes they can last months. Some like hard times when the world starts throwing at you, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the key is just to really, do you want to stay there? That was the question that I had to ask myself regularly. Do I want to stay here? Is this how I want to be from now on? When I'm in those really deep, dark areas, especially in depressive modes, I have to ask myself consistently, do I want to stay here? Is this really where I want to be? And it's not. So I'm always from that point, okay, what can I do to make this a little bit better, a little bit harder? That happens to me a lot. Shaun, what do you got? Yep.
So you ask yourself the question, and let's use you as the proxy for the everyman, for someone out there who is listening to this right now on Wednesday. And so you just said, you don't want to be there. Well, what was there? Like, what was it that you didn't want to be there in, but somehow you'd settled into? And so I think that one of the, not the issue, but it's multifactorial. One of the issues that occur in these sort of circumstances is someone will tell themselves, I don't want to be here. But then they never expand on that, or they never give it a title. They never really consider what I just don't want to be here means. Well, let me throw out some words. I don't want to be here, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the hell out of here. I don't want to be here. This sucks. Today sucks. But what am I going to do to frickin' flip it on its heels? And so it's easy, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easy to give something a title that is just this nebulous, this is terrible, I don't like this. Well, define why it's terrible. Terrible is usually from a cause. And like in Michael's case, when he was facing an amputation, it wasn't just a case of, well, this sucks. There's the follow-on of, this sucks, my leg, and over the next few weeks, months, years, this is what I'm going to have to do. And so it's not enough, in my opinion, to just say, this sucks. You've got to define why it sucks, and then you've got to define the path out of the suck.
Could not agree more. Mike, you got any thoughts?
Yeah. So I co-authored a book with Jarrett Robertson, who's my speaking partner. We go around and we do some keynote speaking stuff, but he has a platform called Make It a Great Day. So when you say to someone, have a great day, right? Don't have a great day. You need to make it a great day. And that's what came to mind immediately when you started talking about that. It was like, yeah, you gotta do the work yourself. You can identify you're having a bad day or it sucks, but then you got to do something about it. And that's the hard part for people, right? Is the doing. So that's where what people have to figure out. They have to figure out how they're going to get into that hole or out of that situation.
So why is it hard? You just said it. It's hard for people to do something about it. It's hard for people to get out of it. If you tell someone, make it a great day, and then in your mind you think to yourself, but they're not going to make it a great day because it's hard for them. Well, why is it hard? What is it? Are we going to get any secret sauce today? What do you think?
So for me, I think it was instilled in me a long time ago. It's just like never give up and always win. And so that's a little win, right? Making a great day is a little win. Or, when something's hard and you beat that thing that's hard, that's a win, right? That's a little win in life. And so I played sports my whole life and everything was about winning. And I grew up with a brother, like a younger brother and an older sister, and it was all competitive all the time. So it was all about these little wins all the time, no matter what it was. And so I think that was just instilled in me at a young age. And then, so when these little mountains or little hills get in front of me, I want to be the first one up it every time. I want to win no matter what.
This is actually kind of funny. I was on the mats the other day with my group of my students, and I was like, okay, so we were describing how to do this particular move, and I was breaking it down into smaller pieces, and I was like, okay, guys, just eat it like an elephant. And everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, well, how do you eat an elephant? And then no one had an answer for me. They're like, I have no idea what that even means. And I'm like, well, you do it in small bites, like, and it all of a sudden clicked with them. But it's amazing sometimes how people, a lot of times when you interact with somebody else and they think we believe that they know what we're talking about when we start discussing these things. And so to Shaun's point, when you say, make it a great day, some people could look at that as how do I make it a great, it doesn't compute with them. And I think it's very similar with a lot of things we say, pick up the pace, do your best, things like that. They have their own connotation in it. And I think it's an interesting point of view for us as motivators or people that want to instill something into somebody else, how to break through that, I guess, interpretation. What do you guys think, Shaun?
Well, challenge the language, just as I just did to the panel, to us right now, or just a few minutes ago. And that is, make it a great day. Big deal. What does that even mean, pal? Make it a great day. For who? For you, for me, for the world, for the kids, for your model railroad collection? I don't even know what that means to you. Do you? That's the important part. Most people will throw out a glib or a trite comment along the lines of, have a great day. And the other person will accept that trite comment or glib comment, and it's like, have a great day. And it just goes right into them, sits in them with zero meaning. Because the person who pushed it had zero intent, and the person who received it had zero understanding. Those two parties are using the same language, but they're actually not communicating. And let's pretend for a moment that the person who said, hey, man, frickin' have a great day. Let's pretend that they really mean it. Well, the person who's receiving it has yet to define in their life what great means. Maybe they've just been day after day doing the usual that isn't inspiring them, and they've yet to have someone enter into their life that injects a pattern interrupt that says something like, hey, man, have a frickin' good day. By the way, what does that mean to you today? To me, that's a pattern interrupt. Now we're talking. Now we're on task. Now we've got to focus for what great day means for that person, not for me, because we're two different people. But I don't think it's enough in the world nowadays to just say, hey, man, have a good day, because that leads to nowhere.
Interesting. Mike, you got anything on that?
It's a lot to think about, actually, because, so many people do that, just have a great day. Or even better, it's how you doing, right? But they don't care, right? There's no actual intent to know how they're doing. It's just, hey, how you doing? Good. How are you? Good. And we do it all the time. I do it all the time at work when you're passing with coworkers and stuff. But do you actually care how he's doing? Probably not all the time. You're just trying to be polite and make a little bit of a conversation on the way by. So that's a good point, and it's something I'm going to think about the next time I do that. Is am I saying it just to say it, or am I saying it because I care? And have a great day. Make it a great day. The same, goes along with the same lines.
I'm wondering now, because this I wrote down niceties and how often those niceties get plastered over feeling in general. Because I started doing this as a little experiment when people ask me, "Hey man, how you doing?" And if I was not doing well, I'd be like, "Nope, not very good today." And they would be taken aback, right? They didn't really know how to respond to that because there wasn't the standard nicety question. And it's an interesting pattern to interrupt to try every once in a while. Tell people how you are actually feeling in that moment. But how do
just hang on a sec though.
What do you got?
Look, I just want to play with that for a sec, because if you're kind of like identifying an action point, as it were. So someone asks you, how you doing? Your action point that you've just stated out is, well, sometimes I tell them actually how I'm feeling. And sometimes it's actually not that good. And so you actioned that moment. But now maybe there's someone out there who's thinking that that's a good way to play this moment, is you look someone in the eye when they ask you that question and you say, not that good. Maybe that other person isn't qualified or doesn't have the ability to kind of meet you in that moment, to resonate with that moment, to be helpful in that moment. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that if you just hit someone with a not very good, that might be the first time they've ever heard that.
Yeah.
And so they don't have a response. And so, Chance, I'm not saying that you're doing it mean-spirited, obviously. I'm just using this as a proxy to like tease out some more details to maybe how we all can manage that moment a little bit better. Because if you say, I feel like ass right now, that's like you putting up a brick wall. It's like a big red stop sign. This conversation's going no further, because most people they don't have the tools to negotiate that moment. However, you can still be true to the moment. You could still say something like, I'm just spitballing. You could still say something like, yeah, I'm actually not feeling that great today, and here's why. Like, I woke up this morning and my dog died, my truck wouldn't start, my favorite country and western radio station just got canceled, whatever, the list. And so, like, I'm not saying you have to go through the details, and I'm not saying you have to get like right into the weeds. I'm just saying that I think nowadays, because it's said so often without any detail, without any personal relevancy to the moment, I think in a moment like that, it's not a bad idea to consider adding a little bit of context,
Yep.
Yeah, down. Mike, you got any thoughts? Anything else?
I agree. And I know for me, if someone does say, oh, actually, I'm not doing that well, I do have the tools to, get that conversation going and say, what's wrong? Do you want to talk about it? But you're right. Most people actually don't have those tools, and they will pretty much just say, oh, that's too bad, and walk away. And I've seen that. And I've seen that before, especially at a job like ours where, there's a lot of alpha males and they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. So if someone does throw that at them, they're just going to walk away and be like, I don't want to talk to him about that. That's not what I came here for. Right.
This is what do you got, Sean?
And maybe even worse. And worse is the wrong word, but I'm using a strong word to make people sit back and think a little bit. But maybe even worse, and that is not an uncommon situation, where there's some strong characters involved in an organization. If a perceived strong individual shows quote unquote weakness in a moment within a pack of hunting dogs, it can get tricky.
Absolutely.
And so if someone isn't trained or hasn't been in the game long enough to understand what is happening in that moment and to support their fellow hunting dog, if that hunting dog kind of dismissively says, yeah, well, that's too bad, rub some dirt on it and moves along, well, that creates some underlying tension in the relationship instantly. That'll always be there until it's addressed. And the more these moments occur, and the more the pack looks at a person who just says, I'm not doing that well today, but then there's nothing more to it, it begins dragging that person's status down in the hunting pack just because we're humans. Now, should it be that way? No. Is it that way? Yeah. And I'll argue that with anyone. And the people who will argue with me on that are typically just not educated. They just haven't been in it to understand it. They have an outside opinion, perhaps learned through a book, that they feel that's not right and this is the way it should be done. But that isn't the way it is in the real world with real humans. And so you have to be aware of these kind of situations to be able to get involved and make things better. Again, I don't think it's enough to say, I'm not doing that well, and then just carry on as if nothing occurred.
I agree. And so I want to bring this back to the topic of keep pushing, because I think instantly for the three of us, we thought, mindset, mentality, we're going to drive forward. We're going to keep these things going. And it almost has a physical connotation to it, right? Obviously you're pushing, but sometimes we have to push these boundaries to begin with, because I want to be able to see who I can talk to about these things anyway. I'm going to have to test that out at some point, because if I'm really not feeling well and somebody's like, hey man, how you doing? And I'm somebody maybe perhaps that I've talked to many times, I'm quite familiar with, that person may not be they might not have the tools, even though I think they have the tools. So there's going to be a point where I have to push the envelope of that relationship to see what happens, and then make decisions based on that, right? I can't just immediately assume that either everybody doesn't have tools, or to assume that everybody has tools, like you're saying, and just throw it out to the world. It's going to be in key points. It's going to be with certain people. It's not so much at random. I guess I made it out to sound like it was at random, but it was with particular people that I wanted to see if I could share with that person. And some people were like, oh yeah, man, life can be hard. If you want to talk about it, let me know. And I'll be like, no, we're good. Just carrying on. So I think that that's an aspect of this keep pushing mentality that we maybe don't engage enough. Mike, what do you think?
Actually, so I just met Greg Lappin for the first time a week ago. We've been friends for a couple of years online, and finally I went out to Utah and visited him. But, this crazy tough, master black belt in jiu-jitsu, this alpha male. And we actually had a connection where we could talk to each other about stuff that men typically don't talk about, because we're comfortable in our manhood, right? And we both kind of just said that to each other. You want to talk? It just, certain subjects came up, and we were able to talk about it. And for two guys that had just met, right? And we had known each other, but just met in person. You wouldn't have expected that from two, fairly alpha males. Well, he's a super alpha. I would call him, right? And we hit it off, and we were able to talk about some deep things. So you just never know. You could come across someone that you think that would not, accept your, how you doing, or the other way around, and they do, and it's like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And then there's another, Jarrett Robertson, the guy who wrote the book with Untapped 60. He's my guy. So if I want to talk, and it's not something I'm going to talk to my wife about, and it's something I just need to vent about, or like it's feelings and stuff, he's a guy I can call, and there's no judgment. He's always got an ear, and it's nice. It would be nice if everyone had that person, or could find that person, because it is a big lift off your shoulders when you need to talk to someone.
Yeah. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do. I'm glad we switched to this trajectory, because, of course, the conversation could go a ton of different ways on the general topic at hand. So first, I got to say that, of course, we had Greg on the podcast just recently, cool as hell. And I agree. He's a hard dude, good dude. And I think one of the things that stood out to me when he was on the show, and to your point, Michael, is that, and this is not my first observation of this, obviously, given my career trajectories. I've worked alongside a lot of highly capable and competent people, but I'll also add that since starting the podcast, over the plus of 900 guest appearances that we've had since we started the show, I've met a lot of people. We've met a lot of people, and people that I've never worked with. But I've worked with enough people over the years that I only need to see someone on the digital screen for a little bit, like a Greg, as an example, or yourself. I've already got the vibe. I know that you'd be in that club, where an individual has faced enough of life, where they've learned enough lessons, where they've hardened up enough to then be able to expose their soft, gooey center. And so typically, unconfident, unskilled, immature men can't share things with each other. But confident, strong, emotionally stable men can sit in a room with another person and listen and perhaps provide advice. Chance, as an example, is 20 years my junior in age. And so there are times in our relationship, to Chance's point, where he had to push forward in his life trajectory. And it wasn't just like a blind charge in a single line. I watched Chance pressure test the world around him, try to figure out ways to do things better, and not bouncing ideas off of me, but him trying different things. And sometimes when he was feeling all of the pressure of it, I would say, frickin' rub some dirt on it, you jackass. But you can't do that ever with someone that you haven't spent time with, or that you don't have a really good read on, or that you don't understand how to play the game. My game is ebbs and flows, pattern interrupts, moving it this way, then moving it in the completely different direction. And so you can't just have one playbook that says, rub some dirt on it, you loser. And that's the only tool you've got. You've got to have the far left and far right of the arcs understood well to be able to play between them. And so my point is this, that Greg is a great example of a guy that on surface level observation seems like he wouldn't be the guy to sit down and hold hands and stare into his dreamy eyes. But he is. And he is that for a reason.
This clicked in my head the moment you started talking, Shaun, was the image of a teddy bear. And the reason it clicked in my head was the fact that when somebody has gone through enough difficulty in life, enough adversity, they become hardened. But if they just allow that to continue, if they just continue to harden and harden and harden, they become a bear, right? They just become a bear. And then they're violent, they're angry, they lash out, they do all those things. But a really good man, when you push in all aspects of life, you will have that hardened outer exterior. You'll look like a bear, but you'll be soft on the inside. You'll be a teddy bear. And it clicked in my head. I was like, that is a really good analogy. And I want to throw it to you guys. Mike, what do you think?
I like it. And I think it's true. I think that your life hardens you and shapes you and prepares you. And I like the way you explained that about Greg, because it's the truth. And it was just, that's why we were able to connect, because we're both in that stage of our lives. We're very close in age, and we've been through a lot, both of us. And we just, there's nothing to, I at this point in my life don't care what people think of me. I care what my family thinks of me and how I provide it and do things for them and my family. But as for he's too soft, or he's talking about his feelings, because I come from a culture, the fire department, police department, any big department like that, they judge you right away, right? They're like, oh, they use certain words that I won't use on your show, but it's just like these things, this view of how we are has to change, and it is slowly changing, and it's people like the three of us, Greg, that are going to change it. They're going to see people like us softening up a little bit and allowing people to talk, and for us to be able to talk, and they'll slowly come around, and they are, and things are changing slowly, but it's going to take a lot of work still, especially like I said, where I come from on the fire department, and the police department I know has the same issues. So we'll get there, but we'll just keep pushing forward, just keep being ourselves and keep doing our thing.
I think that's the key, and I'm glad I want to come back to this concept to keep pushing here, is the fact that I think a young man, this is where rites of passage really come from, is that you have to, as a young man, push your body. You have to push your body to a point that you can stop and think, so that you can actually understand what's happening to you. Whereas if you don't push your body at a young age, I find that as an adult, it's very hard to empathize with anybody else, because you've never really done anything hard. So when you see somebody else complaining about something, there's no real understanding. There's no context there. So at least I think this idea, now that we have all been through some very physical things throughout our younger years, you do the army, you do the police, you do fire, you serve your nation, you serve your community, you try to do something to give back. And then as you get a little bit older, you start to have empathy, you start to get context, you start to go, oh, that's why that's happening. Oh, that's why people engage in that particular thing. And I'm loving this conversation so far. Shaun, you got any other thoughts?
Well, I do agree with your point. I just got to jump back to something that Michael said, and I know he said it fast and casual. I used to do the same thing myself a fair bit. I said, I don't care what people think. I do care what my family thinks. I do care what that person thinks. I do care what my neighbor thinks, but I don't care what people think. We have to care what people think. And I know that was just a quick inject, and I understand the spirit of what you were saying. I do. But I'm also now more particular in my language on the podcast. A year ago, I wasn't quite as particular, but now I'm more particular in my language because more people are listening. More people actually care about the conversation that we're having right now, and they are listening for the details. They don't need to hear that you don't care about what they think. They need to hear about who you care about what they think and why, as it were. And I know that's not what the podcast is about, but I just want to throw that out for everyone. I know that Michael cares.
Oh, and I know what you're saying too, and it was going through my head as you said it. It's not that I don't care what they think. I don't care that if they think I'm a wuss, a pussy, because I'm talking.
Yeah, for sure.
My feelings. That's what I meant. I didn't mean.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
I know you know that. Yeah,
I do. And I'm clearing this up for the audience. And so the other aspect to what Michael said is, not only does he care what you think, the reason that he cares is because he wants your best. He wants the best for you. And so anything that Michael will say from today, I'm sure, he's paying attention to wanting the best for the person in front of him. He's saying things that are trying to draw the best out of them. That's the way of a mature life, which I do believe Michael represents at this point. And so on to my next part, Chance, the idea that getting context of where you're at in life, and context on the people around you, and they're doing it for this reason and I'm doing it for that reason. Context is good for sure. But, context can also be a detractor, because the moment that someone falls in love with dwelling on context, it can slow their roll. It can stop their pace. It can sort of bring the velocity lever way back because they just want to get more context on what happened. And as the hours and days and weeks and months and years slip by, they're still on the couch, still getting context. And they've lost sight of there was a moment in their life in the past where they had that freaking throttle all the way to the 11 notch. And so all I'm saying is this: context is good, but you've got to have context on your context, as it were.
Well, let me ask Mike, how do we do that? How do we get context on our context?
You guys are getting way too deep for me here now. I don't. Hey, I just want to jump back a second, Shaun. Anybody that wants to check me out and follow what I do, I literally, that's all I do is care about people these days. From Untapped 60, offering courses and doing keynote speaking, public speaking, trying to better people's lives and tell them they can get through whatever they're going to limb loss fitness, where I help amputees get in shape, because so many amputees lose a limb and end up just getting so depressed and so down in the dumps that they just never ever get their life back on track. So I dedicate a big portion of my life to that as well. So I took it a little bit to heart, because you said with the not caring part, but that's all I do. And as a fireman, that's what I do every day I go to work, is help people. So my whole life is helping people. So don't take me wrong by the way I speak.
So, well, this actually brings up an interesting point that I want to touch on as well, is the fact that you almost have to have a motive for bias, is kind of what Shaun is saying. Your lowest setting has to be biased for movement. Let me put it that way. Yeah. And the interesting part I find about what you're getting at is that it's not so much that we don't care about people. It's that we don't let others' opinions affect our actions to a degree. And I like what Shaun is saying too, is because in order to be in a leadership role, you have to let other people's opinions affect your decisions, because you're leading them, right? So the concept of not caring, I understand. Again, it's almost a flippant use. People use it as like just a throwaway card, like, oh, I don't care what people think, I'll do whatever I want. And that's great. But if we never care about what people think, then it separates us from the crowd, is what I'm trying to say. So it's harder to lead the tribe, harder to lead the team by being an outsider. And I totally understand what you're saying, but I'd love to get
and Shaun, I learned something right there. And that's, we're always learning, right? And you made a very good point. And now I'm going to watch myself, because that is, you got to be willing to learn. You got to be willing to think outside the box. And that's what you made me do.
Bam. Shaun will give you a knife hand every once in a while.
But it's not that I ever target anyone. I target everyone. Yep. By the way, I've got the biggest target on my own back. And this is the truth. So yesterday, I was chirping on social media. I'm only on Instagram. I was chirping on Instagram. And someone who follows me kind of put me in check with, hey, remember that time that Seb Lavoie, used to always tease me during podcasts because I had not quite a notorious routine, but I had this routine where I would do the old the He called me out a couple times, and I was like, oh, no, you didn't. I'm going to break that habit. And so for, 100 podcasts, I had a big Kronkin yellow sticky just out of view of the camera that said, on it. And I'd be talking to people around the world, and all I could see is this big freaking And so I kind of got rid of the a while ago, which is what you have to do in life as you're moving forward, by the way, is if you're listening to the crowd and the crowd is giving you advice, in a way putting you in check, it's your job to then take whatever you take from that and become the same person or a different person. And so I worked really hard to get rid of the And so yesterday, someone kind of called me out on it and said, hey, remember that time you used to and now you don't but you could still be umming in the future. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there is no one and done. There is no, you solve a tiny problem over here and that's it for life. You're good to go and no one ever puts a target on your back. That is not the case. And I would never want it that way, to be honest.
And Shaun, I think the old me would have 100% have been like, you know what? F you, Shaun. but this me, this mature me, this one that's been through all this stuff is like, hey, I just learned something. Thank you. Right.
The amount of stuff that we've been able to poke fun at each other throughout this show has been innumerous. Like, we have 400 and some odd episodes in now, 430 something episodes of the collective. This is like 40 something of the gold mine. We've been hammering for a while, but there are still many things that we will, at the end of every show, we do this at the same thing. This is part of the keep pushing mentality, is we do a little AAR. We sit down, hey, did we miss anything? Is there anything that we did that we could do better on this next show, from everybody and ourselves? And then we can move forward with that. But I want to talk a little bit more about the keep pushing mentality, in terms of, because I think this is where we fail a lot. Physically, a lot of people can keep pushing, right? We can do work. A lot of people can handle some emotional vulnerability here and there, and we can push it out there. But the one thing I've noticed that most people can't handle is boredom. This is the key, I think, for a lot of the other pieces, is being comfortable up here first. And that is where I think most people need to push right now, is to be comfortable in your own head, to be able to handle silence, to not have to have your phone in your hand, to not have to have someone talking to you or reading or doing something. And I'm wondering if you guys have found a similar concept, in the fact that the more you push your ability to be silent in your own head, gives you more of ability to push in other realms. Mike, what do you think?
I think you made a good point, is with these cell phones and tablets and computers, they're always in our hands and always in our faces, and it's hard to not have something going through your head. You actually need to make space for that. If whether it's you're meditating in the morning, or you just say, I'm putting my phone down for 2 hours, I'm not answering it. And we run our businesses off phones. We communicate with people. For everything we do now is through our phones. Really, your banking, your every single thing, right? I video call my parents now. We don't just phone them; we video call them, right? Because you want to see them, and so just you don't have to drive all the way over there. It's tough, and the kids nowadays are going to find it even tougher, because even my 5-year-old, all he wants to do is be on his laptop or on his iPad, and we really got to be like, you're only going to get half an hour here and half an hour there. And then we don't pay attention to the time. And it's like, oh, geez, it's been an hour. We're going to get them off that. And I just see it getting worse and worse. I can't see that getting better. So you really have to make time to be alone in your own head. And I really think we do need to make time, because we don't know the effects yet of what we're doing to ourselves. But I mean, it's coming out with our kids and all the ADHD and all the, the disorders they have. And I think it's really starting to show, but it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do. And so I think, you propose what does a person do when they're sitting at home in the silence? Like, how do they manage that? Generally speaking, right? That's what we're talking about. Well, I would go so far as to say that isn't actually the problem, because most people have never heard silence. How about that? And so, and I'll use myself as an example to make the point. I remember distinctly. It wasn't too long ago. I mean, it's quite a few years ago, but it's not like it was 40 years ago or 70 years ago. Not too long ago, I remember thinking to myself, oh, I just realized I wasn't thinking. How long was I not thinking? How long was my brain silent? Is my brain broken? That's what I thought. There was a moment there in time where no thoughts were occurring. Nothing. And I thought, oh, is this it? Am I broken? Did that break me? Did this break me? Did that other thing break me? Is my brain broken? Because I was not used to nothing. It's not how it was. Those weren't my careers. That was not my life. That was not Shaun. But as it turns out, that was a pretty magical moment. But I didn't realize it at the time. All I had was concern at the time. And I've been unpacking that moment for a lot of years. Not to unpack it to try to figure it out, but to unpack it to get more. And so I don't think the problem is that most people struggle when they're so bored that there's nothing going on in their head. I don't think people get there. I think they stay so overthinky, so ruminating, so constantly distracted that they don't even know who's inside of them. And so that's my thought.
I do this to my boys on a pretty regular basis. They might eventually end up hating me for it, but I make them do it anyway. Because anytime they come up to me and they're like, "Dad, I'm bored," and I'm like, "Good, be bored." They just, what? And they're like, "Well, can we play on our tablets?" I'm like, "Nope." "Can we watch TV?" "Nope." "Can we read a book?" "Nope." Just be bored. And I give them like 5 or 10 minutes, like not much, right? But just be bored, be quiet, sit, think, and they will just sit and wait, and they'll play with their fingers or they'll figure something out. They'll do something for 5 or 10 minutes, but that gives them an opportunity to know what it's like to be inside their own head. And to your point, Shaun, I don't think anybody takes the time in order to do it. To both of your guys' point, it requires time and
but
effort.
in that situation, if you say, listen, be bored for 10 minutes, do you know what starts then? 1001, 1002, 1003, 10,001. Dad, where's my tablet? Where's my, So while I appreciate the spirit of the mission profile that you've built up for them, I think that there's different ways to do it. And by the way, I'm not just being kind of funny with this point. There are different ways to do it. And as a parent, we all have to figure out ways to outthink the insects that we're looking after. Because that's all they are right now. At the age of 5, they're like a bug. And I will never be outwitted by a bug. I've said that to other parents. Our boys are now, 20, 21 years old kind of thing. Engineering and pre-medicine. They weren't raised on laptops because I will not be outthought by a bug. And I know that sounds like it's almost rude to say it, but I don't mind saying it that way because sometimes that's what it takes to plant the seed in a parent's brain that how are you letting that kid who's knee high outwit you right now? There's no way that is possible except for you enabling it to be possible. And so this is not directed at Michael. This is directed at me, kind of like 20 years ago when we had our kids. No one was talking about how to be a good parent. All they were talking about is which book to buy to be a good parent. There's no hardcore, don't be outwitted by the bug lessons. It was buy another little thing that floats around above the crib and somehow makes your kid like Einstein. Play this music and they'll be a genius. But actually, some of the simplest rules are don't be outwitted by a bug.
I agree. Mike, what do you got?
You know what you made me think of is when kids get on your last nerve and you start to get angry. And that's getting beat by a bug, right? You're letting them beat you by you getting angry. A little kid should never make you angry, but they do. Somehow they get under your skin enough and they irritate you enough, and you're like, how did a little tiny human being make me so angry? And so that's, as you get more mature and you get older, you realize that you're not going to let that happen. Right. So you need to stay calm, and then they'll stay calm. Now, easier said than done, but I am working on that and getting better at it. My wife has instilled some lessons upon me on those subjects. So now it's just like, okay, just wait him out. He'll stop throwing the tantrum. He'll stop getting angry. But I had a child at 39, and I have a stepdaughter as well. So I had later on in life. I can't imagine trying to parent when I was in my 20s. I would have been a terrible parent. I just think I would have been. I wouldn't have short fuse, angry, violent, like all those things, right? That now I have a handle on. So, and a lot of my friends are having children later on in life, and have had children later on in life. And I think it's like a trend now that you get set up in life and you get a good job, get some money, get a house, and then you plan your family, where it used to be the other way around a little bit. But I am glad I started later. I think I'm 10 times the father I would have been as a young adult.
I can't even imagine trying to be 20 and parent a child. But on that note, this would be an interesting thing to find out as well, is that becoming a parent can calm you as well. Like if you are rash and angry, and then all of a sudden you are now in charge of a small insect that you have to move around life and show how to do things, it can give you the tools or the practice of the tools to be that calm parent. Because I know lots of parents that had their kids in their 20s, and some of them are great, some of them aren't. And I think it really I actually use this as a terminology for mushrooms at one point in time, is that it just kind of enhances the person you already are. So if you are a really angry person and then you have kids, you're going to be probably angrier, but that'll give you the tools to calm down if you see them as tools. So this is life, I think. This is the challenge. And this concept of keep pushing is in all facets. And that's one of the points that I wanted to come across today with it, was the fact that it's not enough to just physically keep pushing. It's not enough to just mentally keep pushing. It's not just enough to emotionally keep pushing. It is in all aspects of life. Can I be a better friend? Can I be a better podcaster? Can I be a better human being? Can I be a better me? Can I be a better, and just constant, consistent pushing. And I say this on the mats all the time, is that we should seek movement at all times. And whether that movement is in millimeters or it's in big explosive movements, you just have to stay moving. Now, we are just at about an hour. I just wanted to say thank you, Mike and Shaun. This has been awesome. Let's dive into some final thoughts on the concept of keep pushing, or anything that we have talked about overall. Mike, what do you got?
You have opened my eyes up to the concept of keep pushing, because I always related it to physical and getting better and bettering myself. But you're right. It's in every aspect of life. And we've covered a whole bunch of these topics, and it's fit into every single one of them. So I appreciate it, Chance. Appreciate it, Shaun, for having me on the show and teaching me this, because it's definitely gonna be something that's on my mind for the next little while, for sure.
Man, I love it, Shaun. Any final thoughts?
I do. Like Michael, I was a more mature father. My first son was born when I turned 40. And so, like Michael as well, I'll almost echo exactly what he said. I'm glad I didn't have kids before then, because I probably wasn't suited to kids, or more correctly, kids weren't suited to me. Now, that said, I would have found a way. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. For sure, I would have. But I appreciate my timing, or the timing of the universe, having a kid at 40, because, again, I feel like I was more optimally set up for the success of my children, to be a better father, to be a more three-dimensional person, to bring more to the table for my kids than I would have when I was 20. But again, if I'd have had kids when I was 20, I would have figured it out. And why do we figure it out? Why? Why do we push forward? Why am I glad at 40 instead of 20? I push forward because I want to be successful. Like Michael said early on in the show, I'm a freaking gamer, man. And I'm not talking about computer gaming. I'm talking about I game the world. I game everything. I'm in it to win it. And it's not to beat Michael. I'm in it to win it with Michael. And so for my kids, for the people that I know, podcasting, my own little nonsense that I'd get up to later today, that's all me smashing on the world, trying to beat it, trying to win, trying to be number one, trying to take the gold medal, as it were. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a champion mindset. I don't know why nowadays people are afraid of that, why they are prone to stay away from it, why they think maybe it's distasteful to pursue with such vigor that you see things that no one else gets to see. In parenting, you can do that. In podcasting, you can do that. Meeting new people like Michael, we can do that together. But you got to get with the program. You got to get your vibe figured out. And if your vibe is, I'm going to crush. Oh, congratulations. The forward motion will take care of itself.
Yeah. We, interestingly enough, this is one of the few times we've done a gold mine after the recording of a collective, which will come out after this one is released. And I was just thinking, we were talking about the brotherhood yesterday and how you have to find and align to a brotherhood that's of some sort, and you have to live up to that standard for a while to understand what the brotherhood is. And then if you want to keep going into a different one, that's fine. Or if you want to hang back and into a different one again, that's fine too. But they're all personal choices in everything that we do. And if you want to keep pushing, I suggest keep pushing. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, see y'all next week. Chimo. Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.